There's an obsessive personality that can be very destructive if that obsessive nature is pointed towards negative things. But if it's pointed towards powerful things and positive things, there's nothing that a person with an obsessive or even addictive personality can't do.
It's exciting to see. It's exciting to have conversations about life, sustainability, legacy, and not just talking about financing all the time.
Don talks about really a commitment to leadership. I think that's the distinctive part that makes it so powerful.
I've achieved the American dream, and I'm committed to helping others do the same.
Well, welcome to the Elite Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Don Wenner. I'm extremely excited to talk to our guest today. He's a world-renowned speaker, author, ultramarathon runner, and will be joining us as a keynote speaker in a few weeks in New Orleans on an event centered around legacy. Charlie Engle. Charlie, how are you today?
I'm great, Don. Thanks, man, for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I know you talk a lot and are known for being an ultramarathoner and some of the incredible endurance feats that you've had and have done and are actively doing and helping others do. So I'm going to start off with a question here. Maybe a little different than normal, which is, if you couldn't run, what would you be doing? If you could no longer run for whatever reason, what would you do? Where would you put that passion, energy, and what would the focus be?
I got to tell you, Don, I just turned 60 last September, so that thought does occur to me from time to time. I got a lot of wear and tear. I think there's about 155,000 miles currently on my parts. No, I appreciate the question because it's, those people that know me know that running is it is a passion. It's a metaphor also for everything else that I do, and physical movement, moving my body, using the physical energy to actually access the other parts of my mind and my emotions is why I do it. And I actually think that I know for sure, I'm an avid cyclist. I love to kayak. I like to climb mountains. I even go so far as to say, okay, what if I lost my legs? I think about these things, and I know is the necessity of being able to burn off the core energy that I have so that I can get to the good stuff. I mean, I have a feeling you relate to that. It's just the necessity, and what I would find a way to sweat. And it's not that I'm addicted to the physical activity as much as I am addicted to the aftermath and where that takes me. And a lot of people, maybe I'll do it in New Orleans. I usually ask an audience if they, to raise their hand if they hate running, and 90% of the audience will raise their hand. And, and I try to remind people that there was a time in their life that they loved to run. They love, when you're a kid, you want to run everywhere. If you have kids, you spend half your time telling your kids not to run. And we're built to do it. And it's not until a PE teacher uses running as a punishment that this thing clicks in us and we think running is bad. And for me, it's a vehicle not only for myself, but also for conversation. I don't even like running that much. It's stopping that I like.
I love that. Interesting kind of side story off that. So, and the question of not being able to run. So I'm right now talking to Charlie from Queenstown, New Zealand, and you can kind of see here out my window the mountains and the lake here. I don't know if you've spent time here in Queenstown, but amazing hiking and here it's just incredible. Have you been here?
Dude, you're in my favorite place. I forgot that you were going to be in New Zealand, and it's my favorite bungee jumping spot in the world. So if you haven't bungee jumped there, I expect a full report with pictures from the bridge in Queenstown. Back in my old adventure racing days, I had the good fortune of doing a couple of races in that area and spending quite a bit of time. It is the adventurer's playground of the planet, I think.
It is. It absolutely is. And funny kind of story to the question I asked you is, so yesterday I was at this big park with my kids, and it was gorgeous out and surrounded by these incredible mountains, and there's a skate park there, and my kids are riding these. I bought them some scooters. They're riding these scooters around the skate park, and this guy comes up who's maybe 30 years old in a wheelchair to the skate park, right? You think, all right, he's gonna skate around on a wheelchair, right? He gets his buddy to pick him up on the wheelchair, straps his wheelchair onto a skateboard, and skateboards, right? And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
oh, he's already on wheels, but like that wasn't enough. Like, so he's sitting sideways on a skateboard in a wheelchair, skating
Yeah.
around on a skateboard. And I thought to me, like, wow, this guy doesn't want any excuse, right? There's no excuse.
Yeah.
Anybody else would be like, no way I could get on a skateboard, right? Somehow, I mean, it was amazing to watch. So I'm sure you'd find a way to get that energy out and continue to
Yeah.
do amazing
That's
things.
powerful. It's powerful. And I mean, I do think that that's the key is that it is mindset. And I know you spend a lot of time on mindset and, asking these what if questions. It is kind of like asking about your business or your family, what if my business failed? What if my marriage failed? I mean, it's important to actually ask those questions in advance because, otherwise, you probably have no clue of what you would actually do. And that's when people, really nosedive.
Agreed. So, when people hear and give us a framework, give us an idea. You can always answer this question: the what ultra marathon means and how long of a
Yeah.
distance and how, in most people's eyes, crazy of kind of adventures you're out doing. Give us a framework of that. But when people hear these feats that you talk about, people say that's nuts. Why would you do that, right? Why, number one, but how, right? Can you go so far, so long? So talk to us. How do you drive that? How do you come up with that incredible level of endurance to keep going in these challenges that most people would frankly quit, wouldn't even attempt, let
Yeah.
alone if they did, couldn't complete.
No, I appreciate the question. I mean, first of all, I think it's an inverted graph that you'll relate to. Reasonably intelligent people do like 5Ks and then maybe 10Ks. And then or I should do it this way, as the intelligence goes down, the length of distance and time that you run goes up. So basically that's why I qualify to run, 100 miles at a time or more. No, but it's a process, and for me, it's been this journey. Again, I don't want to tell my entire story here because I'll do it on stage. But I struggled with addiction early. There's a lot of relationships between. I mean, a lot of the people that work in your world are addicts, maybe not in the sense of a drug addict or an alcoholic, but there's an obsessive personality that can be very destructive if that obsessive nature is pointed towards negative things. But if it's pointed towards powerful things and positive things, there's nothing that a person with an obsessive or even addictive personality can't do. And so, for me, the evolution of running directly correlated to success in other parts of my life. So, as a speaker, as a business owner, as a writer, that was the other answer to the question a minute ago, too. I am a writer. I love to write. I've got a book. I've written for tons of magazines, and I do love the process of writing because it's equally excruciating. You've you and many of the people in that audience have probably written a book or done a fair amount of writing, and it's an awful process with incredible self gratifying rewards. It doesn't even matter if you write a crappy book or you run a crappy marathon, the process of taking the steps to commit to something that's hard and getting it done. That's actually what I am most interested in. Physical is the place that I know I can create suffering like very quickly. So part of the reason that I do run and I still run very long distances is that I know it's the place I can scrape away all of the daily stuff that we accumulate just by being alive. Business, 20 calls a day and all the responsibilities we have. I go out for a run. I'll usually put on somebody else's book in my headphones. All of a sudden, the roulette wheel in my head with all the ball. I always say mine has a ball for every slot, my roulette wheel. And after a couple of miles, they all sort of settle down and find a spot. And I can finally then find the thing that I really need to be thinking about and focusing on. Otherwise, it's a jumble, man. I have a chaotic brain, and that's the hardest thing I have to overcome daily is focusing on the tasks that actually need to be done, and running helps me do that.
Awesome. So you used the term there, suffering, and I think a lot of people think of that as a negative thing, and you used it in a very positive framework. I like to use the word struggle, and which is similar word and similar meaning. But question for you is is when you think about the word suffering or struggle, again, most people avoid any suffering, avoid struggle. They think of that as the enemy. One of my favorite books, I'm sure you've read, is "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday, and that idea that struggle is a good thing. I want to ask you a question. We have a lot of, I'd say probably the majority here, or a big percentage of our listeners, have kids, and many I know who'll be with us in New Orleans have young kids. And I'd love your perspective on the importance of struggle or suffering for all of us, but certainly for children and their creation. As the Society of Helicopter Parents, we don't want to allow our kids to suffer or struggle. And how do you think about the importance and the value that comes from that?
I mean, first of all, your word is actually better than mine, and struggle is the word that I use a lot, because there's only one. Look, we don't all relate to success, or if we do, it looks different for everybody. Quite frankly, struggle looks the same for everybody. Now, it doesn't mean that it comes in different forms, but struggle is emotional, physical. It comes from our relationships or from our health or our business. Like most of the people in that room, if you asked them to privately write down their biggest struggle, it would fall into like 3 or 4 categories, and they'd all be the same. Now, how that manifests, of course, looks different. But what I would say is, and I actually use this all the time when I'm doing training sessions in particular with executive groups, because people will say, I just want my kids to have it easier than me. And I say to them, my first question is always like, what do you have against your kids? It's like, because if I dig into their background and I ask them, how did you become the person that you are today? Nobody tells me the story of how easy it was. It's always a story of struggle, because that's what it is. So why would you want to snowplow everything out of the way for your kids? Now, I'm not suggesting, letting them go run in the street, but anything short of that, they need to figure it out for themselves, and if I've raised 2 boys, so I do have the right as a parent to at least say how I did it, and I don't have the right to tell other people how to do it, but I encourage parents to not be the rescuer. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be in the tough love form. It doesn't have to be anything like that. But I think the best answer to the question is, a principle in addiction recovery is called attraction rather than promotion. And what I mean by that when I say that is, people are way more attracted to your actions, to the things that they see you do, rather than the words that come out of your mouth. That goes for your employees. It goes for whoever it is in your life. But it's no more important in any part of your life than in your family life and at home. And I'm sorry if I'm calling anybody out here, but if you're the dad that's sitting on the sofa telling their kids to go out and play, you're missing the point. Now, if you got business and I understand you gotta take care of things and whatever, but the best way you can teach your kids the most valuable lessons about hardship and struggle is to go on that journey with them. I will say probably the best thing as a dad I ever did is I took my kids to Yosemite like 10 years in a row, and they were young, and we would climb to the top of Half Dome and do it safely. I'd have them with climbing harness. I taught them. I'd have them with climbing harnesses, and we would use carabiners and ropes, and I'd teach them how to make sure they've got 2 carabiners. And when they're going up the giant climb with a ladder, they clip in here for safety, and then they pull the other one up, and they continue on, and they understand the relationship with having bumpers and safety mechanisms and not being terrified of doing something. And I think that that metaphor works in all other aspects. And I'll finish the answer with part of the reason I run. When I run 100, I've never run 100 miles in my life that it didn't suck at some point. Because it's a long way to run. And at some point, usually 50, 60, 70 miles, I am thinking to myself, very out loud in my head, why did I think this was a good idea? This is terrible. I'm an idiot. All of the self-defeating conversation. But the reality is the whole point of being there is to get to that point where I can't possibly go on and then find a way to move beyond it. Because in reality, it's a moment, and that's when people quit things. Whether it's physical, like running a marathon, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your business, you hit that low spot and all of a sudden you want to quit. Whereas if you just take a beat, so I know with running, I need to eat, I need to drink. Maybe I need to stop running. I don't need to sit down, but I need to start walking. And 15 minutes later, my pain will go from a 10 to an 8. But that is all the difference in the world. It still sucks, but it's manageable and I can keep going. So with kids, if they don't ever get an opportunity to basically have that same experience, then how can they possibly learn to overcome the challenges that are unavoidable? And if I know parts of your story, and I'm not necessarily asking you right now unless you want, but if I asked you what made you who you are today, or what was the hardest thing you've ever faced, it would actually ultimately be the thing that has caused all of your success, I think.
It's a great point. To add to that, so and your comment of the dad telling their kids to go out and be active and sitting on the couch, kind of. So we have this. You'll hear me kind of talk about this in New Orleans, but we call it our core values. One of the things I focus on is what I call living fully, which is succeeding in all areas of life, and we call it the 8 F's of life: faith, family, friends, freedom, fun, fulfillment, fitness, and finance. And what I think about is anytime I'm just working on one of those areas, that's a single, to use a baseball metaphor, right? I want doubles, triples, home runs. I want to be doing multiple of these things together, right? So I do most of places here in Queensland. I'm out hiking with my kids. They don't love it as much as I do, but we're out hiking together, right? I head coach my kids' sports, so I'm out there with them. I'm out there doing the stuff with them every day. It's a great time to do so many things at the same time. Certainly build be a father and family time, but also we're working on our getting in shape and improving, and it brings me just a quick struggle story that always sticks with me. So one of my sons is a really good athlete, and he plays basketball, and he's the second best kid on the team and being able to dribble the ball by a big distance. The kid who had the ball, maybe plays basketball, and he could control that ball, move it around. He was the point guard. And we go and play this really good team. And first half of the game, the defender who guarding our best dribbler took the ball from him 20 times, like no exaggeration. Took the ball from him like every time down the court, right? So all of a sudden that kid had a stomach ache, right? And he didn't feel good. He needed to come out of the game, right? And his dad happens to be the head coach, and took him out of the game, and he's sitting there with a tummy ache because he felt embarrassed, right? Because he's struggling, right? Yeah. So my son takes over as point guard, and he's coming down, and the ball gets taken from him every time he comes down the court, right? So he's looking over to me as dad, and coach, please take me out of the game. His knee hurts, he hurt his head, his stomach hurts, right? Anyway, I'm doing everything I can not to make eye contact because I'm dad. I don't want him to be out there struggling. He feels embarrassed. He's on the verge of crying. He was 8 years old, but I kept him in there, made him fight through it, and he felt he was letting his teammates down, and just was overwhelmed. But I was like, these are the moments, right? And it's such a small thing in the scheme of the kind of challenges you've had, or even I've had to a lesser extent, right? But just those little moments that you don't have to go out of your way to used to make it hard, but to let them struggle, not to step in and plow the snow out of the way, to use your term. So I think that's
it gives you the chance also to be the loving father. And I'm going to tell you, I did not have a dad who, he did not come to my games. Didn't matter. I was very good at a lot of sports when I was young. And, whatever it was in him did not allow him to love me in the way that I needed. And I tried very hard to get his attention. And I've done it the exact opposite way with my kids, not to the degree that they get a trophy for coming in last place, because I don't believe in that either. But you try as many things as possible, and your son will remember that game, and hopefully it will at some point be the thing that drives him towards getting better rather than away from the challenge. Because of course that's what we all worry about, is that our kids will shrink from the challenge. And I do think it's important, not by no means getting involved in how you do it, but to turn it into that thing. Well, you need to get better at, not you need to, see, I'm even using the wrong language, but help without even saying the words. It's like, okay, you know what? Why don't we get a coach to work with once a week on just dribbling for a little while? And at a very short period of time, your son will not only be the best dribbler on the team, but he will be, better than the other kid on his own team. And I do think that that's the way it works. Or what I also say is sometimes you just learn that maybe basketball's not your game. and then it helps you move to something else. I have to, you don't know this about, I don't think I said this in the book, but I actually I played basketball at University of North Carolina for a couple of years. And maybe I did say it in the book, but, I was there with a guy most people have heard of, Michael Jordan and James Worthy and Sam Perkins. And I was on the JV team, definitely not on the varsity team, but I got a chance to be on the court with those guys, day after day, a lot of times. And you want to talk about the ultimate in humiliation. I was like all state in my sports, in high school, and talk about getting your pocket picked every time you come down court or whatever. It was nothing but a lesson in humiliation for a couple of years, but they're the greatest lessons I ever learned, by far, those. And it helped propel me to knowing that I want those challenges. I'd rather have the challenge, be terrified of stepping onto the course or climbing the mountain or doing whatever it is that I've got in front of me, rather than being comfortable in the knowledge that I already know I can do it. Because if that was the case, then why would I do it? I think that's the thing. When we get older, people forget that you really do need to take on things sometimes that you have no idea if it's possible, and you're not worried what everybody else is going to think if you fail.
Well said. And to your notice, I moved to the next question. Yes, my son then immediately started one-on-one basketball coaching, and now we carry basketball everywhere we go. On this trip, we've been all over the world where basketball's with us, and we're dribbling for at least a half hour every day. So, it's
Embrace the challenge, baby. Embrace the challenge, and you know what? It is. He'll show up the next time playing that same kid. Might be this year. Might be 5 years from now. But the day will come where he'll know that he's going to be facing that kid again, and he gets a chance to take another crack at it. There's nothing better.
Well said. So one of our other speakers joining us in New Orleans is a gentleman named Lloyd Reeb. Lloyd's one of the most incredible people I know. Wrote a book called Success to Significance and was the co-founder of an organization called Halftime. And one of the things Lloyd introduced me to, and as part of something he's helped many successful people evaluate and think about in their life, is what he calls, what are your perfect life metrics? And the way he positions it is, if in 30 years from now, Charlie, you and I were sitting on a park bench and I turned over to you, we were walking on a hiking trail, and I said to you, Charlie, how did the last 30 years of your life go? What are the things that would have had happened for you to be able to say, man, these last 30 years of my life were perfect, right? Doesn't mean you didn't have struggle, didn't mean you didn't have loss and challenge but you look ahead what you're going to accomplish the next 30 years. How would you answer? And that's a big question to ask here as we wrap up our conversation. But what would you say? What are the most important things today for success for you? You look back 30 years from now.
It's a fantastic question. I will say that I have a little bit of a cheating ability on this, because I recently wrote my own eulogy, it was an exercise that I did at a place, and it was. I mean, I'm sitting there. I literally start writing, and I'm thinking this is stupid. And 5 minutes later, I'm crying my eyes out, and I'm like, that whole thing. But at this point, like if I'm looking at the previous 30 years from this very moment in particular, um, I feel satisfied in the sense that my motives were good and that my heart was that believed very seriously in the single philosophy that to keep it, you have to give it away. It's a core principle that I live by, and it's the powerful ability to take whatever gift you have. Doesn't matter whether you're an artist or a musician or an athlete or you're wealthy or whatever, but whatever you have an abundance of, figuring out a way to use that for a means to help other people. And I believe that these past 30 years, it's ironic because I'm 30 years clean and sober at this point, so it's much easier for me to say that these past 30 years have been very much geared towards, sort of empathy for the world and the ability to compassion for other people. I lived a very, very selfish life before then because that's what drug addicts do. And I think the most important point, I'm talking in a big circle, but I will say this because it just dawned on me. I spent the first 10 or 15 years, I think, of these last 30 trying to make up for things that I had screwed up and make it up to people, make it up to myself, make it up to whatever. And I don't know if that was the right way to go, but I didn't know how else to do it. Luckily, that led me to a path where I understood that I'm just human and that, whatever power in the universe you believe in, I certainly believe that, I was forgiven and that, what I needed to do was take that obsessive energy I talk about, point it towards positive things, and ask myself, how can I continue to impact other people? And the answer is to keep it. You have to give it away. I do these big adventures, but I honestly don't, I call them cultural exploration because and I would even say the best thing I've done in these 30 years is see the planet. I have run across 40 countries, and I don't mean in 40 countries. I mean across 40. And when you embed yourself in another culture that you don't understand, and in particular one that you might actually be afraid of or that you might have very negative impressions of, if you immerse yourself in that culture, almost every single time you'll come away with a completely different view. And that is one thing that I can very proudly say that I've done and that I want to continue to do.
Awesome. Well, I love that, Charlie. I'm going to let us end with that as my last question. I'm going to turn to you. Number one, how does, outside of joining us at our legacy event, which you can go to DLP Capital, put in the show notes.com and click and join us for our legacy event, March 22nd to the 25th. But outside of that, how do people get a hold of you? How do they reach you? How do they learn more?
I'm a one-stop shop, man. I'm a one-stop shop. Just go to my website, which is just charlieengle.com, and all the social media stuff is there. A lot of my writings. You can order a book if you're so inclined. Anything is pretty much there. My phone number and my email. I've got some people that work for me, but I insist on the phone number and email on my website actually being mine because I want, if somebody hears something, especially around addiction or around running or whatever, I want to make sure that they can reach me. So all of that on there is, you can get to me directly. And I really look forward to seeing you. We're not too far away, so I'll see you soon.
Yes. Can't wait. Look forward to very much. Thank you, Charlie. This has been awesome. And charlieengle.com, learn more, and I'll see you in New Orleans.
All right, Don. Take care.